Hello, everybody, and welcome to the PHLY podcast on a snow day Friday. Zach, how are you?
Doing great. Excited for the show. Happy to be back in character. Back in.
Oh, so this is a character that you've been playing all these years.
Happy to be back as myself, I should say. And I realized the joys of a snow day for these kids, right? I was preparing for the show, and my son was playing NBA 2K, and he was he was the All-Star team. He was playing against the Spurs, and he's telling me how much he's like cooking the Spurs, to use his language. And I'm like, you're the All-Star team, you should be.
Okay.
So that
was the joy of snow day. I thought that was leading to like a specific
no, the joy of snow day is playing
romantic memory of your own or something like that. But,
yeah, playing. I used to have those college football dynasties and those Madden franchises.
Nothing better than a snow day. Come on.
Exactly. Although out shoveling this morning, it was good to do that. And back.
I'm surprised you are even willing to admit that a snow day is good. It's a wasted opportunity to be productive. It's you're not getting your work in.
Well, it's more opportunity to be productive because you're not commuting, right? So there's actually there's 30 more times for the kids. True. But for us, thrilled to be on here and excited to talk Eagles. Busy day. This meeting between the two of us is not the most important meeting today. It's the meeting between Jeffrey Lurie and Nick Sirianni, which I imagine will probably go a little differently than our show yesterday went.
I would hope for Nick's sake.
I would hope for Nick's sake too. I feel badly. I don't think I represented Nick as intelligent as he might be, and I think
I would agree with that.
Wow. Jeez.
Well, you were playing a part, but I mean, if Nick goes into Jeffrey like you went in yesterday, then yeah, he's done.
And then I think Jeffrey is probably a little more amicable than you.
Well, only if somebody's bringing something intelligent to his desk.
You were like a Machiavellian owner.
I don't think so. I think I was just reacting to what you were giving me.
I was waiting for you to say, call me Mr. Lurie, not Jeffrey, right? Because you had a little Daniel Snyder in you during that show.
I'm going to leave that one alone. I don't think so. I think I was acting. If Nick had came in the way you came in, I think he would get the response that Jeffrey was giving.
Oh, sure.
Yesterday.
Yeah, I think. Realistically, there should have been more of a tangible plan that I offered, which I actually had, and I was getting to it, but I think I kind of got sidetracked by some of the stuff at the beginning, right? To explain what happened. I was ready to explain what we're going to do in terms of, I had a whole thing about utilizing Arthur Smith's motion, but nonetheless, I'm curious to see what happens today.
Arthur Smith's your big answer, huh?
It's not my big answer. It was more bringing different ideas and thoughts to the table as opposed to running with just the same offense that's been utilized during the past 3 years. But
let's talk about the meeting itself and what you actually think is going to happen in that meeting. Away from playing the role, what do you think Nick is going to bring to the table, and what do you make of this meeting happening on a Friday and not earlier in the week?
It sounded like there were logistical hangups there. Now the game was Monday night. The exit interviews were Wednesday because they got in late Tuesday. Realistically, you probably would have liked this to happen on Wednesday or Thursday, but
I actually, this makes more sense to me. I'm always a little bit surprised at how quickly those meetings happen. Like, you pick your head up from losing in the playoffs. You probably need a couple days to get your thoughts together and reflect on things. And like the reports of both Nick and Howie reaching out to prospective coaching candidates, like in order to formulate a real plan, you need some time to put some of that stuff together.
You're right. And the thing too is, and Nick said this after the game on Monday night, that he wasn't preparing to lose, right? So he didn't have this
prepare to lose to prepare.
So he didn't have this pitch ready to go, I imagine. He said he didn't have their day after, their exit interviews prepared either, right? Because to your point, he was preparing to play a game against the Detroit Lions this weekend. So I do think that there is validity to taking a few days certainly meeting with your players. You owe your players that. You owe your staff that. And then you get a chance to meet with Jeffrey Lurie. It's much different when a decision has already been made. If you're in a Ron Rivera seat, for instance, and it's like everyone knows this is coming the day after the season, right?
Sure.
This is obviously much more nuanced, and I'm curious to see what comes out of it. My guess is it's going to have a lot less to do with the plan for like the schematic plan or the offensive and defensive principles, and much more to do with staffing, I imagine. Because what you do is you put a staff together and then you put your plan. Like, I think it would be odd for Nick to say, this is what our offense is going to look like next year. Because if you know what your offense is going to look like, why didn't you do this 2 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago or 6 weeks ago, right? If you have these grand plans to fix your offense, what you do is you have a general philosophical approach. You put your staff together, and then you try to add, you try to adjust based on the staff you have in place.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think there's a little bit of room in between those two things where we want to add certain elements to the offense, and we want to hire people who can bring that, or maybe there is a general defensive philosophy and we want to hire somebody who can help fit that. But yeah, you're not putting together game plans a week after the season's over.
Precisely.
Do you think that you have moved the needle for yourself anymore on what you think is going to happen? I sort of feel like the twisting in the wind that Sirianni has to do all week here, as we wait for the meeting and everybody around the league speculates on what's going to happen, is kind of like his punishment in a way. And
yeah, you said that. Yeah.
Unless the meeting really goes badly, which it could, if Nick brings something silly to the table and says we're going to run it back with everybody and Matt Patricia is going to be my defensive coordinator, then maybe Jeffrey makes a move. Yeah,
I think he's going to stay. I don't say that with the utmost conviction here. I mean, I'm a reporter. I'm trying to find out more, but also I'm not in that room, so I'm dealing with an information deficit. I don't think this is apples for apples to the Doug Peterson situation after the 2020 season, in large part because that was 5 years in, right? That was after a 3-year slide, if you will. That was after a 4-12 season. And
they would tell you that 3-year slide included 2 playoff appearances.
Sure. But point being that I think there was much more probably built up there. If you recall, the year before, there was the whole thing with Mike Rowe and Carson Walsh, right? So I think there was more built up there. I think there's less for Nick Sirianni to stand. Nick Sirianni's entering year 4. He's still, to use the expression, the coach he's becoming, right? The coach you can become. And there's still growth and evolution from Nick Sirianni's perspective. That my guess, and I don't say this with inside information, this is just us talking, is that he might be more amenable to changes and adjustments than Doug Peterson might have been. And I also think
he also has less equity. He has less of a leg to stand on.
Sure, but not to relitigate like the 2020 situation. But there were 2 other factors there. I think there was a part of Doug that was kind of spent, right? Like he put up with this. Like Doug, I think at that point was ready to do it his way. And then also it seemed like Doug did it Jeffrey and Howie's way the year before, right? So if he was going to come back, it was going to kind of be on his terms. Mm-hmm. Whereas Nick hasn't had that, all right, I'll do it your way year yet.
He hasn't had a Scangarello year yet.
Exactly. He hasn't had the Scango year. So that could be a variable that's different. In that respect, this might be more comparable to the 2019 going into 2020 season, right? When they lost in the first round of Seattle.
Yeah, I sort of believe that it's like it's Sirianni's job to lose, basically. Sure. He doesn't have to go in and win the job. He just has to not lose it. He has to have some general cohesive acceptance of what went wrong, clear-headed, and also a willingness to make some significant changes.
Also, if you're of the perspective that Jeffrey would only make a move, excuse me, if he has somebody lined up or if he has an idea of where to go, and you think that option's Bill Belichick, there's a lot of smoke to the Atlanta situation with Bill Belichick. He's going in for his second interview there this weekend. That is a team that needs a quarterback, but they do have talent on both sides of the ball with which he can work. There's a relationship with Rich McKay. Arthur Blank is a respected owner. Now, I think the Eagles situation is more desirable for sure. The Eagles situation is also not open, right? So that would be a variable.
I mean, we think the Eagles situation is more desirable. I think it is more desirable for Belichick, but also like Arthur Smith chose the Falcons over the Eagles before, right? Like,
well, I'm saying the situation was different then than it is now too. The Falcons' job in 2020 was different than the Eagles' job in 2021.
A little bit. Yeah.
The Eagles' job in 2021 was Carson had demanded a trade.
Yeah. Atlanta was not that great though. I mean, you had a washed Matt Ryan.
Although you didn't know he was washed at that point, but go on.
I mean, only if you had eyes.
Wow. Yeah, you're the quarterback evaluator.
I mean, he was as old as you.
That's actually, he is a year older than me. So he graduated class of 2020, class of 2003. I graduated 2004. So he's a year older than me.
You went from 2003 to 2004.
Yeah, he graduated 2003.
Curious. Which one do you prefer?
Graduated 6.5 dozen.
Okay. All right. I want to talk about some of the specific defensive coordinator candidates out there, because I do think that if they keep Nick Sirianni and want to totally change the defense, they are in a good position. Like it is a much different situation than it was last year, and having to replace Jonathan Gannon. I think there are a lot of good options potentially out there just because of the way things have shaken loose. So I want to get to that in a minute. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit about Rocket Money, Zach, because I've been saving money on Rocket Money, and you can too. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower those bills. Do you pay my bills? Do you pay my Audible bills? I don't think you do, but Rocket Money does. I can see all of my subscriptions in one place, and if I see something I don't want, I can cancel it with a tap. I never have to get on the phone with customer service, and they will even try to get you a refund for the last couple of months of wasted money and negotiate to lower your bills for you by up to 20%. All you have to do is take a picture of your bill, and Rocket Money takes care of the rest. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has helped save its members an average of $720 a year with over $500 million in canceled subscriptions. Stop wasting money on things you don't use. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions by going to rocketmoney.com/PHLY. That's rocketmoney.com/PHLY. rocketmoney.com/PHLY.
I'm hungry. I've gone out of that. I have not really had much of a breakfast. I haven't left the house other than, a brief shoveling period. I could use a bagel right now. And if I want a bagel, you know what kind of bagel I want? A Brooklyn-style bagel that's made in Philly. We're talking about huge bagels, the biggest bagels in Philly. And there's a large variety, too. So it's not just the size of the bagel. It's the size of the variety here. Usually there's 15 to 20 different types to choose from daily. There's seasonal bagels as well. And I don't just like a bagel variety. I like a cream cheese variety. Think of all the permutations you can use with this bagel and that cream cheese and that bagel and this cream cheese. It's the largest cream cheese variety, 30 different flavors of cream cheese and schmears. Excuse me. They cater to various sports teams in Philly and in Florida. I'm talking, by the way, about Bagels & Co. And they're an affordable brand. You get a lot of food for cheap. And in today's inflationary world, we think that's key. They've debated raising their prices, but they want to be an everyday brand, not just some high-end place you go to splurge on the weekends, but a place you can go to every day to get the types of bagels you want. For the best Brooklyn-style bagels made right here in Philly, head to www.thebagelsandco.com/store locator to find the closest Bagels & Co. near you. That's www.thebagelsandco.com/store locator.
It's not the size of the bagel in the fight. It's the size of the fagel and the fight in the bagel.
You nailed that one.
Nailed that one. Really,
Yeah.
really landed
Yeah,
landed it on that one. It's too early.
It's 11 a.m. It's
Yeah.
not too early. What time are you up today?
7.
Okay. Good for you.
I don't know.
Prepping for the show?
Always. My whole
There you
life is
go.
prepping for the show, Zach.
I like that. Repping Princeton football today. Shout out
That's
to
right.
Coach Flynn
And Middlebury hockey.
and Millbury hockey. Okay.
Okay. I think there are 3 buckets here of defensive coordinators that we can talk about. There are the, up and comers who have never been NFL defensive coordinators before. Your Al Harris's, who you mentioned yesterday, Chris Hewitt from the Baltimore Ravens, even Kevin Minter, who was interviewed by the Eagles last year. We can talk about those guys.
Right?
Jesse Minter, sorry.
Yeah.
You have the available defensive coordinators, guys who have shaken loose because of head coaching changes. A lot of people like Ryan Nielsen from the Falcons, who made an improvement for what was one of the league's worst defenses. Patrick Graham is on that list. The Titans defensive coordinator is on that list. And then you've got the sort of head coach of the defense guys, right? Your Vic Fangios, who is not available technically, but it seems like there's a little bit of,
Chatter.
questioning, unsuredness about what's going to happen in Miami. Mike McDaniel did not necessarily go to the bat for Vic Fangio. We know that the Eagles wanted him last year, so maybe there's a way to right that wrong. Leslie Frazier, who you mentioned yesterday, even Ron Rivera, who has said that
He wants back in.
that he'd be willing to take on a coordinator job. Of those, before getting into the specific guys, of those 3 buckets, which one do you think makes the most sense for where the Eagles are right now?
For where the Eagles are right now, I think the head coach of the defense type. The former head coach with kind of the defensive gravitas to come in, and you might not be getting the up-and-comer, but you probably have a better idea of what you are getting than the first-time coordinator. Now, I always am in favor of giving someone an opportunity, and I like the idea of finding the next great coordinator, if you will, right? I'd rather be a year early than a year late on someone, as you saw last year with Jesse Minter, for instance. But I think given where the Eagles are right now, I think the what Wade Phillips once was with the Rams, what Dan Quinn is with the Cowboys, what Jim Schwartz was with the Eagles, that guy who comes in with the track record, with that gravitas, I think is probably where they go after having gadded the decide. Now, one might counter, that could be what Matt Patricia was. No. The one thing with this, as opposed to the in studio, is if I have to, cough or like clear my throat.
Where did that thumbs up bubble just come from?
If I have to the cough or clear my throat, I can wait for the solo shot of you and then do it. But when we're always in the frame, you can't necessarily clear the throat. So what I did actually during yesterday's show, or no, 2 days ago, when we were home for it, was I stopped my camera for a second, put it on mute, and then did that. But in mid-sentence, I probably need to clear my throat. I would think that the former head coach, established defensive coordinator, probably makes sense given the stage that the Eagles are in.
I think I agree with you. Now, you could make a case that, I didn't mention Ajiro Evero, right, who is highly thought of and has done a good job with the Broncos and Panthers the last couple of years. You could make a case that he or even Ryan Nielsen might be considered like that. That
or
they
Wink
could
Martindale,
right. That it's not going to be Wink Martindale. Come on, or that they could come in. I mean, it's not going to be Wink Martindale.
Do you know this? I mean, are you saying this with authority?
You think they want to bring more drama into the building with this guy who who philosophically doesn't agree with let the front four go?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's not a match. I think it's not a match for the players. Correct.
Or the organization. I mean, that's a guy who who gets in fights everywhere he goes. Then they're not hiring Wink Martindale. But I think you can make the case, and I wonder if this is part of Nick Sirianni's messaging to Jeffrey Lurie is maybe in the wake of Gannon leaving, I was a little bit too involved on the defense this year, and that took me away from being as offensive obsessed as I needed to be to help fix these problems. And so moving forward, what I need to get our offense as good as possible is somebody who I can fully trust to just handle the defense, and I don't have to worry about it at all. And I think there is a good case for that. I've always liked the idea of Leslie Frazier.
Yes, I was about to say that.
To me, he's the guy. I mean, I think I'm going to do a story for all PHLY and actually like look through some of these guys' track records and have some takeaways. But just from a first glance, I like the idea of Leslie Frazier a lot. As a fit here. Ajiro Evero would be up there for me too, and I'm even a little bit interested in the Ron Rivera possibility.
Okay, I'm more interested in the Leslie Frazier than the Ron Rivera possibility.
Why is that?
It's been a long time since Ron Rivera's oversaw the defense. Right now, I know he's a defensive-minded coach, but he's been a head coach for a long period of time here.
Yeah, maybe it's reinvigorating to him.
Maybe
really
so.
Just get back to ball instead of having to worry about all that BS.
I mean, Leslie Frazier, he's been a coordinator for 14 years. He was a head coach for 4 years. He runs a scheme that I think, or he's worked in schemes that make sense with this Eagles personnel. When you look at if you can get pressure with your front, he does blitz more. You know, he has that Jim Johnson background. He's worked with, he's worked with Marvin Lewis. He was, the defensive coordinator when Brad Childress was in Minnesota. He was a successful head coach there. You look at his defenses. He's been kind of all over.
In the chat.
What's that?
The Mike Zimmer shout in the chat. How about that one?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, maybe so. Who knows? That would certainly fit that profile, right? But Leslie Frazier is someone who has a lot of. He comes with the gravitas. He comes with the defensive coordinator experience. The organization knows him. Now he wants to become a head coach again. He's 64 years old. That can, in some ways, work against him. But I like the idea of Leslie Frazier if you're going for that profile. I am not. Now, we'll stick to this profile and we'll kind of get to it a little later on. But I like the idea of finding the up-and-coming guy, whether it's a college coordinator or whether it's a position coach. But I do wonder if the unknown of that is where you go if you're kind of coaching for your job, if you will.
And I think just from a thinking through the path to success standpoint for the Eagles, and you look at this year, like all they need is competence on that side of the ball. Get me to 20th, and we've got a shot, right? Just don't be awful. And Ron Rivera, even if he's not going to be scheming up, the next thing that nobody's thought about on defense, or he's going to be a trendsetter. The same thing with Leslie Frazier. Like they're going to get you to competence. And I think there's a real selling point to that for the state of the Eagles defense right now.
That's a valid point. Now, so you mentioned Rivera. We discussed Frazier there. Who else would you like in this category?
So what do you think about Fangio?
Well, I think that would kind of be the ideal for them.
Brandon Staley, somebody mentions too.
Yeah, Sirianni has the relationship with Fangio. The organization has the relationship with Fangio. Head coaching experience, considerable coordinator experience. There's this idea, I saw this in the chat, that stop chasing this Fangio scheme, right? It's getting, I don't want to say exposed, but it's not having the same success around the league. What you hope is that Fangio is smart enough and experienced enough that he can continue to adapt. And with different personnel comes different results too, and that he can try to maximize the personnel that he has here. And that Miami defense, I know what people say about the way it looked at the end of the year. They lost some key pieces toward the end of the year. They lost both their pass rushers, right? Their top edge rushers rather. So that defense might have looked a little different with the talent. Now you have to overcome your talent sometimes, especially if you're a great coordinator. I would not be opposed to Vic Fangio if he gets let loose, and I think it could kind of be a resetting of sorts, and certainly someone who knows your team and knows Sirianni.
Fair, well said.
And knows Philly too. I mean, would fit in well in Philly.
Big Phillies fan.
Oh yeah.
Tell me what you expect in those meetings to be the conversation about the offensive staff.
It's a good question. I would think it's buttressing that staff. Am I using the word correctly?
Buttressing. Nice work.
Am I using that correctly? I saw in the chat people didn't like when I used permutations for the cream cheese and the bagels. There are different permutations you could use. There's combinations, but there's also isn't permutations correct there?
I don't know. It didn't pop to me as incorrect, but okay. I suppose it could be.
No, I think permutations are you're going through all the different permutations.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that works.
All right. Chat. I mean, I'm always interested in being or I'm always eager to be corrected. I want to be correct.
Permutation is about the order of things, but yeah, you would change the order of things. I think that works.
Okay. Well, maybe there's permutations and combinations. I should have said that, but I appreciate that everyone's following along here. So I'm sorry about that. I think the offensive staff.
The classic thrown off by having to read every comment.
The offensive staff.
Story of their life.
When I say buttressing, I would guess they'll keep Brian Johnson as the coordinator, as the play caller, and you're looking for kind of a senior offensive assistant. I know. Cue up this Scangarello.
So now we got to get into it. Everybody's saying permutations is about order matters. Combination means the order doesn't matter. But if you're ordering your bagel, you can change the permutation. What if you want the cream cheese all together and eating it like a sandwich with the cream cheese on it, or you want to split it up in half and spread cream cheese on one side and butter on another side, or you want a bagel sandwich, like the way that you're eating it is still the order. The permutation is a little bit different. I've got your back, Zach.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Bo, and appreciate that, Austin Hoffman. So I think that they'll try to keep Brian Johnson. Look, Brian Johnson, by the way, we didn't do a news update. Interviewed yesterday for the Falcons job. That's the third team that's interested in him this year. He's well regarded around the league. He's had a lot of. Oh, thank you, Khalif. Feelings mutual. For the audio listeners, Khalif was echoing Bo's sign off and said, "We love you," and we love all our loyal listeners and our new listeners as well. So
stilted episode so far today.
What episode?
Stilted. Oh, we're a little bit all over the place.
Yeah, we are. We can be a little better today. I will take responsibility for that. But we have 30 more minutes to make this a good episode,
or get even more off the track.
I hope not.
I would say. Tell me if you disagree.
Wait. Here, so I'm sorry.
I think the Eagles are very rooting for Brian Johnson to get a head coaching job.
Sure, I would think that gives you the best of both worlds there, right? But I don't think they want to move on from Brian Johnson's offensive mind. I do think there's validity to the argument, I think there's validity to the argument that Brian Johnson is not running his offense. He's running Sirianni's offense. But if you watch Brian Johnson at his previous stops, he's been creative. He's used personnel well. He's well regarded by the players on his team. I do think this offense needs to evolve, and perhaps that comes to Nick utilizing more Brian Johnson's ideas. But I think the idea of getting a senior offensive voice in the building, not necessarily what Scangarello was, which is to bring new ideas, but more so to kind of bring kind of a respected voice, and you can kind of bring things together. We talked about Frank Reich. Maybe Frank Reich fits that description for them. And then I think at the position coach level, maybe adding or changing some of those seats and bringing in more established
what seats do you think might be up for changing?
Well, I would say at this point, everything except offensive line coach, right?
Is a conversation, at least.
Is a conversation. Yes.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
I think that's probably fair.
Yeah.
I feel like Jamal Singleton is safe.
Okay. Yeah. 2,000-yard rushers. Yeah, that's true.
And assistant head coach.
Yeah.
I think he's probably feeling okay as the running backs coach if Nick stays. I think everything else is a possibility.
Deuce wants back in.
I think Jason Michael's fine also.
Okay.
I don't think he's going anywhere.
Okay.
And then
so that leaves quarterback and wide receiver.
You could figure it out from there.
Okay.
Well, first of all, I think they're rooting for Brian Johnson to get a head coaching job because then they can replace him without getting rid of him, without making waves against Jalen, and they're going to get a draft pick, right? Like, sure. That's obviously part of their calculation.
And it's also it's a good sales pitch around the league that you've built 3 head coach or not built.
Our team wasn't even good, and we got a head coach hired away.
3 head coaches in 2 years is that shows you every time people talk about these organizational issues, we're the envy of the league, right? So
true. I do think I would be surprised if they don't add someone of significance to the offensive staff. Even if it is Nick being allowed to take greater reign over the offense, or even if they're handing over more responsibility to Brian Johnson, I think there's somebody else coming in.
If I can interject and bring the conversation sideways for 1 second.
Interject. You can do whatever kind of eject you want.
But it's consistent with this discussion. Have you sketched out the musical chairs in your mind of like which coaches get which jobs? Because I don't know if there's going to be a seat there necessarily for Brian Johnson. I think that if Belichick gets the Atlanta job,
let's do it. Let's have this exercise.
So if Belichick gets the Atlanta job, Harbaugh gets the Chargers job, okay? And
Ben Johnson gets Washington.
Ben Johnson gets so if he gets Washington, if Ben Johnson gets Washington, then I think Carolina could be in play for Brian Johnson for sure.
Yes.
Right? I'm not sure Tennessee.
Where does that leave? Tennessee and Carolina?
Las Vegas.
And Las Vegas.
Yeah, Tennessee, Carolina, Las Vegas. Interviewed in Carolina. Could there be a Halby Brian Johnson package deal in Carolina?
Well, we know from just things that we've heard that like David Tepper views the Eagles as the organization that he wants to emulate.
Yep.
Like specifically. And so I think that is a possibility. Who knows what the relationship between Hallaby and Brian Johnson is, but you would imagine that being a pair that would make sense. What we've heard about Carolina is they want Dan Morgan to stay there and be the head like personnel guy, but they want to hire a football executive above him. And so Hallaby makes sense on that front. Does Vrabel get a job?
So if you think Ben Johnson's going to Washington,
I think
Carolina's going to put the hard push for Ben Johnson as well.
Right. You're both going to go.
But Washington's a more attractive job.
Probably so. Vegas is probably either Antonio Pierce or Harbaugh, it seems like.
Yeah, I think it's going to be Pierce. I think Pierce is back, and I think Harbaugh goes to the Chargers.
Okay. And then that leaves Tennessee.
Yeah.
For Mike McDonald, maybe? Or maybe Mike McDonald gets whatever Washington, Carolina one doesn't.
Sure.
Hire Ben Johnson. And then there's nothing for Vrabel.
Yeah. Now, I think Vrabel's a candidate in Washington, but Vrabel could sit a year, right? He got fired, correct? So he's getting paid.
Yeah.
It's when they say there's a mutual parting of ways, but if you get fired, you're still getting paid. If you resign, you're not getting paid, right? So
correct.
The semantics are important there. And Vrabel could be the top candidate next year. So Mike Wise says
Seattle. We forgot about Seattle.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Well, if you're thinking Dan Quinn, although they talked to Mike Kafka, your boy.
Yeah.
The coach I think
McDonald will get one of those jobs then. Now that we forgot about Seattle.
Yeah. And then, I think Raheem Morris is a strong candidate. Raheem Morris is someone who got a head coaching job at a real young age in his early 30s in Tampa Bay. And I think he's grown since then.
It wasn't that bad either.
No, he's worked on both sides of the ball, right? He's a defensive coordinator. He's been a wide receivers coach. He was Julio Jones's wide receivers coach, so he's experienced greatness up close.
So have you.
I think Raheem Morris is an interesting candidate, and I've heard a lot of real good things about him as well.
What about Aaron Glenn?
Yeah, I mean, I've read a lot of good things about Aaron Glenn. I don't know Aaron Glenn personally, but look, whatever Detroit's doing, I respect, and I like a former player. I think there's value in that, and certainly a lot of good head coaching. I'm sorry, a lot of good coaching experience was, and it was a high level assistant with the Saints under Sean Payton. Working under Dan Campbell now, is interviewed for jobs. Aaron Glenn certainly someone who should be ready for that.
Peckness migrate as a head coaching candidate. Brian Johnson, Aaron Glenn, Bobby Slowick.
Man, well, Bobby Slowick has that Pro Football Focus bump, so you must love that, right? Look, Brian Johnson. I'm closer to Brian Johnson than some of these other coaches. Like I don't have as much information on Bobby Slowick other than the articles I read, and I was real impressed with the Texans offense when I watched it the other night, but don't know much about his leadership ability. Certainly has worked in the Shanahan coaching tree. And look, if DeMeco Ryans picks you to be his offensive coordinator, hand picks you, that's a good endorsement as well.
It's like getting picked to go to the dance by the prettiest girl in school.
But Brian Johnson, I do think Brian Johnson's a good offensive mind. Has a great way of connecting with players. Look, the Eagles' offense was not good enough this year, and I will tell you that, and Brian Johnson should tell you that, and Nick Sirianni should tell you that, most importantly. And perhaps Brian Johnson his play calling did leave much to be desired too. I do think Brian Johnson had more. Trying to find the right word here. I think he was restrained more than some other offensive coordinators and play callers might be. And so, but I also don't think you hire a guy because of what they do as a coordinator. You hire a guy for the leadership ability. You hire a guy for the personality. You hire a guy because of the different experience and perspectives that he could bring. And that is Brian Johnson's worked under. He worked under Dan Mullen. He worked under Urban Meyer, your boy. He's still young at the NFL level. Worked with Shane, worked with Sirianni, was Alex Smith's backup at Utah. Brian
played for Averian Hurts. You're going all the way back.
I would say Aaron Glenn has interesting experience that I like and has high level playing experience.
Is it Aaron Glenn or Glenn Aaron?
It's Aaron Glenn.
Okay.
And from all accounts has strong leadership ability as well. It comes down to if you have a bias against defensive coaches, which fair or not, that comes up here because we've discussed this in the past. An argument that you hear is that you're a good defensive coach and you have an offensive coordinator in mind. That offensive coordinator is hired. Okay, it's much harder to replace your offensive coordinator than it is to replace your defensive coordinator. Time has shown that to be the case.
You know who I would rather have than Bobby?
By the way,
Slowick?
we're talking about as prospective head coaches. We're not talking about for the Eagles here.
Right. You know who I would rather have than Bobby Slowick?
Who?
Bobby Fastick.
Oh, man, that's such a bad joke.
FOCO is a leading manufacturer of sports and entertainment merchandise with a product line that includes apparel, accessories, toys, collectibles, novelty items, and more. It's the best officially licensed gear for all sports and fandoms. And if you're going to a basketball or a hockey game, you can do both on the same day tomorrow at Wells Fargo. They've got a Flyers game at noon and then UConn Villanova at night. Show off your love with team-branded friendship bracelets. Whether it is hoodies, jackets, beachwear, or even overalls, there is something for fans for almost every occasion. FOCO has hooked PHLY up and provided awesome pieces for our sets. FOCO always has our back for Philly sports, and they have yours too. Get the best gear around by using the link in our description for all non-pre-sale items. Use the promo code PHLY10 for 10% off.
I also want to say that you and I nailed DeMeco. And
I wish.
You're ridiculous, Bo. You are ridiculous. I know we nailed DeMeco in that back in 2021 when the Eagles were hiring Sirianni. We were saying, and they were interviewing Gerard Mayo, right? We both said, like, if you're interviewing Mayo, why aren't you talking to DeMeco Ryans here? And I always said it's better to be a year early on a coach than a year late. Like DeMeco is a stud of a coach, and I understand that sometimes it's not necessarily good to just hire people you're exposed to, but there's also the argument that when you're exposed to somebody, you see it up close. That's better than a job interview. He was in your building. What's so funny? Are you reading the comments now?
Yeah, but I'm also reacting to you continually using the word expose in relation to DeMeco Ryans.
But I don't know where your mind is most of the time. I mean, goodness, Bo. I am a...
You keep talking about DeMeco exposing himself to us. I mean...
You've seen him close, the type of leader that he is, and I'm not surprised at all by DeMeco Ryans' success. I'll put it that way.
Okay. I agree.
Okay.
He's very handsome.
All right.
All right. Anything else to talk about on the coaching front?
Well, so I deviated that conversation. How do you expect them to fill the offensive staff? And do you expect that senior offense? Say Brian Johnson doesn't get a job.
Yeah, I think they're still going to add someone of significance to the staff beyond a different position coach.
But you think Brian Johnson stays the offensive coordinator so long as he's not a head coach somewhere?
I do. I would put if we say that Nick Sirianni is returning, I would put it at 70 turkeys that Brian Johnson remains the offensive coordinator.
Okay.
Maybe 80. What do you think?
Yeah, I would probably put it at 80 as well.
Okay.
Unless Brian Johnson wants to leave, right? Unless Brian Johnson's like, I can go be an offensive coordinator somewhere else and have this autonomy and not be coaching for my job, that kind of thing.
I don't think they would let him out of his contract.
Probably not. Yeah.
Right. Send us a draft pick maybe, but okay. What are you thinking about these games this weekend, Zach? I want to talk about these games.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch them. Number one. Here, let me pull up my notes here on these games. So tomorrow is Houston at Baltimore, which we just talked about DeMeco. Green Bay at San Francisco. So these are the 2-1 seeds. Of these two, which one do you think and someone asked me this the other day, which one is more likely to lose? Which one's more likely to get upset? And while you're thinking, I can answer. I think San Francisco is more likely to get upset here. I think Houston's a better team.
If they lose, they get very upset. They spend a long time being very upset.
Good point. I think Green Bay is hot right now, and I'm not sure that they don't have the better quarterback in this game.
I agree with that. I mean,
I think, as good as Stroud is, Lamar Jackson's better.
Well, and they've got, the Packers have this such a long history of just getting dominated by the Niners in the playoffs. It would be very funny from making fun of Aaron Rodgers' perspective if they got it done with Jordan Love.
Sure.
I think both are possible. I'm surprised at how lopsided both lines are. But I would say I agree. I feel a little bit better about the Ravens than the Niners.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Ravens are the best team I've seen this year. Obviously, that's not a far
of course, but it's and it's not about who's the best team over the course of the season. It's who's going to be playing the best. I don't know. I feel pretty good about the Niners too. I think both favorites will win those games, which is not a crazy thing to say, but yeah.
You think that's convincing?
I mean, I bet that one favorite beats the spread and one favorite doesn't.
Okay.
Okay.
And then that Tampa Bay. Detroit
I think if I could see Houston hanging in that game, and it's not a blowout, but the Ravens win by a touchdown.
That Tampa Bay Detroit game.
I think Detroit's going to kill it.
Sorry, I think my son wanted to make a cameo.
Let's bring Reed in.
Does he want to come in?
Reed, I want to hear about you. I want to hear about you cooking the Spurs.
wants to get something. I need to take my audio out then.
Read.
We're doing a live show here. Okay, I think he's getting stage fright. Okay, that's fine. So anyways, I look at this and I say that Green Bay can push the Niners. But I think Baltimore's a much better team than Houston. On Sunday's games, I like Detroit. I'm really impressed with the mettle that they've shown. That's a tough place to play. I'm not that impressed with Tampa Bay, even though they did that against the Eagles.
They didn't do anything against the Eagles. It was not an impressive performance by them.
Sure.
I think they're going to get killed.
You think Tampa Bay is going to get killed?
Yes.
Yeah. And then the Kansas City Buffalo game. I saw this. I was reading this morning. I couldn't believe it. I think it was Deion Dawkins who said that Patrick Mahomes has never played here when there are fans in the seats. And you think of all these like Bills Chiefs games, and they've all been in Kansas City for the most part, outside of 2020 when fans weren't in the stadium. I'm big on Andy Reid. I'm obviously big on Patrick Mahomes, right? Bold take there. I usually pick Kansas City. It's our running joke for 5 years doing this show that at the beginning of every year, my Kansas City's winning the Super Bowl. That said, I see all that snow in Buffalo right now. And I think like you can call an offense of Josh Allen just running and try to tackle him. So I'm actually going to go Buffalo in that game. What about you?
Interesting. I'm leaning Buffalo, but I feel like push come to shove, I may just take Kansas City and just believe in Mahomes again and the heartbreak in Buffalo.
Has the past 10 days changed your view on how on like if they should play games in these conditions, if stadiums should have domes, that kind of thing?
No.
Okay. I've seen this argument reignite that like that for as much as we talk about elements, that game in Kansas City last week was.
Yeah, I think they could have moved the Kansas City game. I think they probably didn't need to have human beings sitting in the cold in that game. But I don't think that means they need to build a dome.
I think, and I've thought about this in recent years when I think back to that Green Bay Giants game when like Tom Coughlin's face was
I remember.
Red.
I remember watching that game while I was bartending at Beef O'Brady's.
Look at that flex. We forget how old some of these coaches are, and like it's Andy Reid's in his 70s, right? It's not healthy for a man like that to be outside for 5 hours. He's 65 years old. It's not healthy for a 65-year-old man to be outside for 5-6 hours in sub-zero temperatures. He had icicles coming out of like we all saw the shot. And I was listening to the Kelsey podcast. Travis gave this anecdote of Creed Humphrey.
Right.
Did you hear that? And
yeah, I did.
Andy Reid comes over to him and he's giving him instructions. Creed Humphrey says, "Coach, you have something on your face." He said, "I know it's a beauty pageant, or it's a football game, not a beauty pageant." Yeah, like that.
You like that?
Come in. He's
Reid, the chat's going nuts for you, man.
Reid, the fans want to see you. Oh, he has his helmet. I'm not a fan, right? I'm a reporter. My son's he's becoming a fan. Here, you want to wear your helmet? Okay, all right. We can't keep doing this, so we gotta get back to the show, Reid. Sorry, he's a little nervous.
It sounds like you're talking to me.
What's that?
We can't keep doing this. We got to get back to the show.
We got to get back to the show. Yeah. So you're going Chiefs, and you think the Lions smoke them?
Yeah, I don't feel super strong about Chiefs, but I would say that the one I feel strongest about is the Lions.
Okay. And that pushes the Ben Johnson sweepstakes back another.
Who are you? You're objective, but who would you like to see win the Super Bowl, and who would you like to make sure doesn't win the Super Bowl?
Honestly, sometimes I roll my eyes at like narratives, and I don't subscribe to just because someone has a take on Twitter, then that's the way people think. But there is enough Lamar Jackson stuff out there, right? That this doesn't work in the playoffs and that kind of thing. And I just think Lamar Jackson's a special player. And so probably Baltimore for that reason, because I'm sick of reading that. I'm sick of hearing that. You don't have to be a type of quarterback to win in the postseason. You just have to be a good quarterback to win in the postseason. He has gotten hurt, and you can say that's based on the way he's played. It's been unfortunate, but like Peyton Manning got hurt, Tom Brady got hurt, right? So he's just got. I mean, Lamar Jackson just got hurt at the wrong times. Tom Brady got hurt in week 1 of a season and tore his ACL and was out for the year. So probably Baltimore for that reason. And I think that I respect the way they built that team. Every year when you and I do our draft grades and we have these guys like ranked at a certain way and they fall in the draft, and then Baltimore takes them. And it's just,
I have had a lot of like my shadow draft picks end up on Baltimore. Yes.
Exactly. So it just seems like they don't outsmart
my guy Geno Stone.
Yeah, they don't outsmart the room, right? They're just well coached. They're tough. They don't make excuses. They lose players and they keep winning. Even their down years, they keep winning. So yeah, now they need to erase some of these postseason struggles, but that would be the team I would look out for. What about you?
You know what? I kind of like. I think there's a nice story to be told for almost all of the teams remaining. I would like Baltimore. That's a good one. Detroit would be fun. Buffalo, you'd feel good for the fans. Green Bay, I think, would be a lot of fun. In the like the first year post Aaron Rodgers, that would be so great. I'm not a particular fan of Kyle Shanahan, but that's no surprise. I don't know. That's about all I've got there.
Now we're gonna be out at the Super Bowl. Okay.
Baby,
we have
boots
5
on the
shows.
ground.
We
Your
have
favorite
5
place
shows
in the world.
Yeah, we have 5 shows out there, and so from a storyline perspective, now obviously when we're there, we're not talking game all the time. We're still talking Eagles, and we'll have guests rolling throughout all 5 days. But if Detroit's there, you got the C.J. Gardner-Johnson storyline.
Oh yes, the C.J. Gardner-Johnson storyline.
I don't know, I'm just throwing that out there.
That's it.
No, there's other storylines. You crapped on my C.J. Johnson note.
Well, I think you've got the Halapoulivaati Vaitai storyline in Detroit. In Texas, you've got
is Coyote still on the lines?
Of course he is.
Okay.
Coyote Awashika. So that's a big one. If it's the 49ers, you've got Javon Hargrave and Matt Pryor. If it's Green Bay, they don't have Rasul anymore. Do they? They've got the Rudy Ford storyline, of course. You've got the Rudy Ford storyline. If it is, who else are we forgetting in the NFC? Oh, Tampa Bay. Who does Tampa Bay have that on their current roster? Who is a former Eagle? Anybody?
Oh, Todd Bowles.
Todd Bowles from last year. Todd Bowles from last week. Baltimore, you've got the Nelson Aguilar storyline.
Wait, Reed, come in, buddy. Yeah, here he goes. Here's Reed. This is my son.
Reed!
Here, you want me to take my AirPods out so you want to hear?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
Oh, the chat's going to go nuts. Reed, can you hear us?
Hello.
Can you say
Reed,
hello,
you're on
everybody?
live, Sorry, he's a little nervous. Okay.
That's okay. We've all been there. Dynamite cameo.
Reed, we can talk about Wheelhouse cards. Sorry about that. But the Detroit one fascinates me the most from this perspective. Okay. There's Super Bowl media night that we'll go to, and Coyote Awashika is going to be there. And I would love to see like 55 minutes of you talking to Coyote. And there's like a Boston reporter who wants to talk to him about his UMass days, but he's boxed out because you're doing
Buffalo
reporter. Sorry. Who's talking about his Buffalo days. Who was I confusing him with from UMass? Sorry.
Jack Driscoll?
No. They had somebody else last year from UMass, but from his Buffalo days, and all, and so Tim Graham is at the Super Bowl, and he's talking about his Buffalo days, and he can't get in because you do a 55-minute Wolf stem.
Well, I mean, let's make it 60.
60. There you go.
Hold on, we have to finish going through the former Eagles. Okay. We did Baltimore, Buffalo. You've got obviously Ryan Bates and Rasul Douglas and Jordan Poyer. And they've also got Linval Joseph, I believe. Kansas City, Prince Tega Winogo.
That's the one. Yep. That's the Eagles connection. Prince Tega Winogo.
And then Houston, we said DeMeco. And Cameron Johnston.
Yeah. Yes. Let's just workshop this while we have an audience here. What's the plan?
I think it's good that we read aside, which was the highlight of the episode. I think it's good that we followed up what people were saying was the best PHLY Eagles episode yesterday with arguably our worst.
I don't think this was the worst. But if a change is made or if a decision comes in the next 24, 48 hours, what's our plan for MC shows?
I think depending on what the news is, we will have an emergency reaction pod.
Yes,
if there is an official announcement from the team. Timing wise, it might have to wait a couple hours, but we will do that for sure. I mean, I think if the only announcement is Nick Sirianni has been retained and changes to come, then I don't know that we need to do too much. If the announcement is there's a sacking, as they would say across the pond, then certainly we would do an emergency show for a while, as long as we can, as quickly as we can. But I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I saw Mike Florio on Pro Football Talk write about this, that the Eagles might not put out an announcement at all. Like Dallas puts out an announcement that Mike McCarthy's coming back, and he says the Eagles might view that almost like beneath them. Like, you don't announce that your coach is coming back if he's coming back.
Yeah, I think it's more likely that it's like they let the reporters know.
Sure.
Adam Schefter says that Nick Sirianni will be back. Expect some staff changes, and then the Eagles don't announce anything until they've actually let people go.
Yeah, but we are due to talk. We should say we're due to talk to Nick and or Howie and or Jeffrey at the end of the season. Now, it's supposed to be this week. I think for obvious reasons, we can understand that this isn't, there's still a decision to be made here, right? We all remember that 2021 press conference when like Doug and Howie talked the day after the season, and then all of a sudden Doug's fired a week later, right? So they probably want to get their ducks in a row here, but we are going to hear from them.
What do you think would be the funniest outcome?
The funniest. Define funny here. Like what?
The Eagles announced Sean Desai as head coach.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the funniest outcome would be Matt Patricia's promoted, or like no, they make all these changes, but they keep Matt Patricia as defensive coordinator. I think would be
that would be funny.
Yeah, let's build around Matty P.
I hope that there's a press conference that features Nick Sirianni somehow doing something even weirder to a water bottle than Doug Peterson did in, what was that, 2019?
2019, yep.
Watch that video again. It's so funny.
Like, it was happening right in front of us. It was happening right in front of us.
Yeah, and then at the very end of the clip I was watching the other day, you see Doug give the U, like he starts to do this, and Reed was, what, 3 years old by that point?
Yes. Yeah, it's still, it's like the line about John Kennedy, that he's forever 45, right? Like in Doug Peterson's mind, my wife's forever just had the baby, because every time he sees me, he's asking about the baby. And Reed's right here. He's 6 years old. So but then there was he might have been referring to Sloan, but Sloan's 5 years old now. So
good for you.
Yep.
All right. That'll do it for this episode of the PHLY Eagles podcast. We will be back if there is news before Monday, and if not, we'll be back Monday at noon, I believe. So stay tuned for that. And thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the snow day for all the locals. And for Julia, who, by the way, I need to apologize. Even as Jeffrey Lurie, I should have called you the executive assistant yesterday. My secretary was, I think, too
too crass. So apologies there.
Speaking of the class of 2004, you got Julia.
You don't age her.
You said we went to high school together. You can't. I mean, it'd be weird if we're talking about someone who was like in 6th grade when I was a senior. I mean, that'd be yeah. Julia and I went to high school together. Is that bad to say, Julia?
No, that's not bad.
Okay, thank you.
Julia cameo.
Julia cameo.
Hi, just a quick one. Okay, bye.
Well, for all of us here at PHLY, we thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. We will talk to you later. And as always, we love you.
We all silly like the mayor.